That's 1, 2, 3 series wins in a row. Don't look now, but those Reds, well, they done got hot.
You are Locked On Reds, your daily Cincinnati Reds podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Reds. My name is Jeff Carr. His name is Steve Offenbaker, and we are glad that you are alongside us here today. We have loved these Cincinnati Reds since birth. Seriously, I got like the pictures to prove it, baby pictures and red stuff. I don't know if Steve has that, but I can't vouch for his baby pictures. But I can tell you this, we are going to bring you Reds content that is mostly optimistic every single day because we are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every single day. And we're going to discuss the big thing on every Red's mind. We're going to give you some geeky numbers, and we're probably going to overreact to the everyday movements of the marathon that is the MLB regular season. Glad you're with us here today, though, because we got so much to talk about. I'm back from a trip, just took down to South Beach, hung out in Miami a little bit, even went to the Marlins ballpark, and that got me thinking about a future Reds ballpark idea. We'll discuss that a little bit later on in today's show, though, because these Reds are red hot. And we're going to talk about the biggest reason as to why. We're also going to look at the strength of this team that has been the strength of this team all season long, that quite frankly is surprising that it's the strength of this team. That's all coming up on today's Locked On Reds podcast that is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $200 in bonus bets with any $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn to get started. And Steve, where we're going to get started today is this amazing turnaround, because many had proclaimed the death of the Cincinnati Reds 2024 playoff hopes. Many had said that this team ain't gonna cut it, and they've cut it in a big way thanks to one man.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. And that one man has been the reemergence of TJ Friedl. Getting TJ Friedl back has had the impact on the lineup that Matt McLain had with his call-up in Colorado last year. You know, we saw a team that was kind of floundering, kind of struggling in 2023. They didn't really have an identity. They call up Matt McLain, and it starts the youth infusion. But when they added Matt McLain, there was a spark. There was an energy. There was a change in the way that this team performed offensively. We're seeing that same effect with TJ Friedl coming back from the injured list. He is performing at a very peak level in a very short period of time. If you don't put any qualifiers on it as far as number of at-bats, he leads the team in OPS plus right now at 126. He has hit for power right out of the gate, already has 3 home runs, 13 RBIs, and really is just once again nice having Captain Chaos back up there at the top of the lineup.
And he can play every day. I mean, he struggled a little bit against Shota Imanaga, but quite frankly, so has a lot of people in the league. And the Reds were able to do as little damage as they possibly could to him. But for the most part, he hits lefties very well as well. But in the 10 games since he returned on May 29th, in the 10 games since he returned, he has been red hot. You mentioned those 3 homers. He's hit them in those last 10 games. He has 11 RBI in 10 games. And he has 8 strikeouts to 7 walks. He is giving you quality at bats every time he steps to the plate. And if you look at these 10 games, Reds are 8-2. And of course, they had the 7-game win streak, could have had an 8-game win streak and all that great stuff. But we'll take the 3 out of 4 against the Cubs every single day of the week. And as a team with TJ Friedl, this Reds team has been red hot in the last 10 games, slashing .295 with a .369 on base and .467 slugging. For a team that struggled so mightily during that stretch of May where they just couldn't seem to get anything going, they flipped it on its head and are averaging over 6 runs a game, Steve. Plus, in 10 games, they got 12 dingers. This lineup is getting right, and the biggest reason why is just because TJ Friedl returns and they're getting healthy. What'd we say? Yeah. It was the unsexy thing. Nobody wanted to talk about it, but you get healthy and you start hitting better.
And there's a bunch of guys, Jeff, that really have an argument for being player of the week, right? You know, in the last week, Spencer Steer's slash line is 276, 334, 48. Ellie De La Cruz is 250, 323, 500, but 2 home runs, 5 RBIs, 2 stolen bases in that time period. Tyler Stevenson, my God, in the last week, a slash line of 348, 400, 565 in the last week. And of course, not to be outdone, former rookie of the year, Jonathan India in the last week, Jeff, 364, 444, 5. All of these guys have gotten hot at the same time. And I think you're right. I think Friedl is the spark of that. And this offense is finally doing the things that we spent all offseason talking about what they could do, what they could be. Now that everybody's back and getting healthy and getting hot, and still this team doesn't have Noel V. Marte. Still, this team doesn't have CES. Still, this team doesn't have Matt McLean. At some point in time this year, this lineup may have all of those guys together right about the time you're making a final playoff push. This team could be very, very dangerous. People are ready to give up on them. You're right. I don't blame people for wavering when they wavered, but we tried to prepare everybody for what May was going to look like. And May looked like exactly what we thought it was going to look like. We said this needed to be somewhere around 500 in June. Guess what, folks? They're 2 games under right now, and they're trending upwards.
Yeah, they are. And quite frankly, and let's talk about that playoff push for a minute, because they're one of 5 teams, Steve. There's 5 teams that are tied for the final wild card spot right now, and they're all under 500. That's what this adding the 7th going up to 7 playoff teams has done for this playoff race, is that all you have to do is hang around 500 and then go on a little bit of a run, and then bam, you're in, baby. I mean, you said it, and actually I'll let you say it in a minute. The team that the Reds are, closest to, pretty close to in the win column, with all of the struggles and all the crap that they went through in May, the Reds are close to who in the win column?
They're only 3 wins behind the Atlanta Braves. The money spending, contract extending Atlanta Braves that everybody wanted to point to as, well, if the Reds would just be a little bit more like the Atlanta Braves. They're within 3 wins. They're within 3 wins of the Atlanta Braves.
And really just keep this going. I'm not saying you got to win 7 games in a row all the time, but they needed to do that to get back to this position. Now they can play 500 ball. They can play 3 out of 4. They can play 5 out of 6 and stuff like that and feel good about it. 5 out of 7, stuff like that. You don't have to go on a 12-game win streak now, because you've gotten back to that position. You've gotten to the point now where it's like, all right, we're starting to get healthy. We get TJ Friedl back. The second opinion that CES was seeking, which it sounds like that was a good idea, because the second opinion said, no, don't start your rehab yet. Rest for 5 more days, then start your rehab. He's probably 2-3 weeks away. Then the Reds get him back, and then at the end of the month, they get back Noel V. Marte, and then fingers crossed they get back Matt McLean. Just hang around 500, because it seems like when these guys come back to the lineup, like TJ Friedl just did on May 29th, then this lineup goes insane, and the team hits a little bit of a streak. And that's all you got to just hover around 500 for right now.
Yeah, and I mean, and I know there's baseball purists, baseball old timers, baseball days of time gone by that are like 500. We're talking about but just ask the Arizona Diamondbacks what can happen if you just get in. All you got to do is get in the tournament.
Exactly. And we talked about this team all year, that this was going to be such a fun summer. And as annoying as May was, they have gotten back to the point that this summer is going to be fun, Steve. They've reset the bar here. They've got themselves back into a position where they're going to contend. They're tied for second place with the Cubs. Really, and I saw somebody say this a couple of days ago on Twitter, that it's like, yeah, the Brewers are in first, and then you got 4 teams that are in second place in the NL Central. And that's basically what it looks like right now. And the Brewers, they lost yesterday, so maybe they're starting to come back down to earth a little bit, where they were getting performances from guys like Bryce Terang, who you don't expect to go crazy like the way that they've been doing. And maybe William Contreras stops hitting 400. So then they come back down to earth, and then you're really cooking with gas. Nick Krall said it, And everybody just absolutely piled on him when he said it. But Nick Cross said it about 2 weeks ago, that he says, we are going to go on a run and we're going to be buyers at the deadline. And everybody's like, buyers? Are you kidding me? Well, what's it look like they're about to be, Steve?
Looks like they're about to be buyers. And I just want to point out that while everybody was doing their offseason predictions, if you watched the Locked On National League Central prediction show, this division is shaping up exactly like we said on that show that it was going to. All of the hosts from Locked On said this was going to be a tight, close, competitive division. Everybody was going to be in the mix. It was hard to predict what was going to be going on. It's fun summer. It's going to be a fun summer. I can't wait for it. And a big, big part of that is having TJ Friedl back sparking this lineup. But as good as the hitting has been for the Reds recently, the starting pitching has been consistently good all year long. And coming up, we're going to talk pitching and whether or not it can continue to be as good as it's been. Get supplies from the site that's made for the skilled trades, SupplyHouse.com. SupplyHouse.com is the reliable way to order plumbing, HVAC, and electrical products online. Their easy-to-use website is packed with helpful resources and the latest product info to help you get the job done right. Shop a complete inventory of over 200,000 parts from over 400 top brands and get your order delivered right to your door with fast shipping from coast to coast. Need help with an order? Get expert support and industry-leading service from the friendliest folks in the business and talk to a real person each and every time. Pros in the skilled trades can get a competitive edge by joining SupplyHouse.com's free Trademaster program. Every Trademaster gets access to dedicated phone line, free shipping, and discounts on every order. Join the thousands of trade pros already benefiting from their free membership at SupplyHouse.com/TM. Order plumbing, HVAC, and electrical supplies from anywhere with just a few clicks at SupplyHouse.com.
Summertime means baseball, the NBA Finals, you got football training camp with lots of futures for the NFL and college football and more. And you can bet it all over on FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets with any $5 bet. That's $200 you can use to bet everything from the Finals MVP, from the NFL Super Bowl champion, or who's going to hit a home run out of the ballpark. Plus, if you remember, about 10 days ago, we said FanDuel had the Reds' odds to win the division at 13-1. Well, they've cut that in half. FanDuel now has the Reds at plus 650 to win the NL Central, as they've climbed all the way back to second place in the division. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and add a big win to your summer bucket list. FanDuel is America's #1 sportsbook.
If you haven't had a chance, so it's my turn to talk, sir.
Rusty.
See what happens when you take a week off and spend it on a cruise ship? You're still hungover from the drink package. You have got to check out Locked On Sports today. It's a free 24/7 streaming sports channel. We've jumped off the rails. It's programmed for you each and every day to bring you the biggest stories in sports. Locked On Sports today brings you can't miss analysis, opinions, and news covered by the national hosts as well as the local experts from the Locked On Podcast Network, like Jeff. It streams 24/7 on YouTube or for free on the Amazon Fire TV channels app. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Everydayers coming up on tomorrow's show. The Reds are off, but we're going to be right here with you, and we're going to be talking about the rise and fall of Graham Ashcraft. That's coming up tomorrow. But while we're talking pitching, we're going to talk some pitching right now, and overall how good it's been. There was even some good stuff from Graham Ashcraft sprinkled in before he became bad Graham again and got sent down. But right now, the Reds have one of the best 1-2 punches in all of baseball as far as the starting rotation goes, in the form of Hunter Greene and Nick Lodolo.
Yeah, I mean, both guys right now are absolutely killing it. And really, when you look at them, they flip-flop just about every other time they start as to who has more like wins above replacement, who has been the biggest impact on the rotation. But we're talking about two guys that we thought a couple of years ago were going to lead this staff. And as injuries plagued Nick Lodolo last year, and as Hunter Greene sort of ebbed and flowed with his productivity over the last couple of years, we started to wonder, what is this pitching staff going to look like? Well, it's come down to exactly that, because Nick Lodolo has been, let's go ahead and say it, he's been just about unhittable this year. I mean, 2.9 ERA, and the FIP says that he's not even getting that unlucky, or I mean, he's not even getting that lucky. Because his FIP is at 3.3. That the fielding independent pitching, and his WHIP, the FIP, the WHIP, all the whips, his walks plus hits per inning pitched is under 1, i.e., he's allowing less than 1 base runner per inning. Absolutely phenomenal stuff from him so far in these 9 starts he's made.
FIP, whip, Jeff, if only you were hip. No. I'm kidding. Listen, Nick Lodolo has been something special. Yeah, exactly. As special as he's been as he's come back. Listen, 2.92 ERA, 52 innings pitched in 9 starts for the Reds. He has struck out a grand total of 56 batters while only walking 12. Strikeouts per 9 is at 9.6, walks per 9, 2.1. He is right where you want him to be. Here's the difference, Jeff. I talked about this with everybody's favorite Jeff Carr impersonator, Tim Daniel, as he filled in for you while you're away. By the way, thanks again, Tim. Appreciate you
Very
being
much
here.
Appreciate it. Yeah.
We talked about this. Nick Lodolo is using his changeup as an out pitch now. That is a big difference from what he did last season. Last season, you saw that back foot breaker as the out pitch, and that was pretty much the out pitch. If you weren't going to get the fastball, you were going to get the back foot breaker. He's throwing that changeup for outs now, and that is a huge difference in keeping the hitters off balance as they're facing him.
Yeah, and quite frankly, that's been sort of a development for Hunter Greene as well, as that split finger that he is throwing now that seems to be ramping up the usage of that, because we've seen it, and Barry Larkin and John Sadak talked a lot about it on Sunday's games broadcast, is that if you can create a 1-2 punch of a fastball and a split finger pitch, the way that those pitches leave the hand and the way that the ball spins, hitters can't tell what's what. And so they think it's a fastball, so they speed up their swing and they swing over top of it. Or if they think it's a split finger, they slow it down, they try to move their swing a little bit lower in the zone, and the fastball goes up over top the bat. And then Hunter Greene's slider then becomes even more of a weapon because it's the third break. We always talked about he needs a third line of break or a third plane for his pitches. The split finger has opened up all of that, and that is really what has transformed him into the pitcher that he's become. I find it interesting, we're going to talk about this a little bit more on tomorrow's show, that they push him back after his most recent start. He gave up a couple of homers to the Cubs and things like that. So the fact that he gets pushed back a little bit it gives me a little bit of pause, but he's been healthy and he has pitched phenomenally well up to this point. And just like Nick Lodolo, it's the third pitch, baby. Love it.
Yeah, they're both maturing. We're seeing maturity. We're seeing both of these guys get farther and farther away from being throwers and closer and closer and closer to being elite pitchers. Hunter Greene, I'd like to see him get his walks under control just a little bit more. His walks per 9 right now is 3.7. I'd like to see him get that down to 3 or under. Strikeouts per 9 right now, Jeff's sitting right at 10. He's at 9.8. He's getting the job done. ERA of 3.61 in 13 starts, 77 innings pitched. Hunter Greene is becoming that ace we want him to be. There's a little bit more work to do, but again, all of the trends move in the right direction. Now, as good as those two have been, the third guy that I want to talk about in this rotation is Andrew Abbott. Now, he's not been as consistently overpowering, but he has been very, very good at times. The thing I liked about what Andrew Abbott has been able to do of late is the times that he's clearly not had it, much like his last start. He has been able to gut and grind and push and fight and smoke and mirrors his way into an effective start, even when he doesn't necessarily have his best stuff. That also tells me that he's moving more and more away from being a thrower and closer to being a pitcher. When you can go into a game against major league hitters and not have your command, I mean, Andrew Abbott knew it. Derek Johnson knew it. David Bell knew it. We all knew it watching. He did not have it in his last start, but he just kind of continued to gut check it out, grind it out, and kept the Reds in a position to win.
Yeah, and that's something that he's been doing. Not necessarily he's been missing his command all year long, but what happens is he doesn't do the missing bats thing a ton. Like his chase percentage, his whiff percentage is kind of low. You would like to see that climb up a bit, but he misses barrels. Hard hit. People do not hit him hard. And then the average exit velocity against him is below league average as well. And so those are the kind of things that you need to see when you don't have your best stuff. You're not going to miss bats. I mean, we saw it on Sunday. Frankie Montas, who we'll talk about in just a moment, didn't have his best stuff. Well, when he wasn't missing bats, he was hitting barrels, and everybody was absolutely clobbering whatever he threw plateward. Andrew Rabbit still doesn't quite do that. Like, he's found a way that whenever he's not missing bats, he at least misses barrels, and he still keeps his team in the game. And quite frankly, Frankie Montas, we're giving him a little bit of a nod here because, sure, we're talking about him right after his worst start of the season, but he is a guy that, while he is inconsistent, he can still be very, very, very good.
Oh, he can be downright great. I mean, what he was able to do in Colorado, his last time out, he threw 7 innings, allowed 1 hit, struck out 9, walked 2, and that's at Coors Field. That was a phenomenal start. He's had some very, very good starts. He's been able, and even his not so good starts, the Reds are in those games. I think the most runs he's given up in a start is 4. He's not given up more than 4 runs in a start, at least since May 12th, which is what I have back in front of me right now. So he's not giving up more than 4 runs. This Reds offense should be able to compete in a game where they're 4 runs or less down. So I mean, he's just, we wanted him to come in and be an ace. We wanted him to come in and be, they made him the opening day starter for reasons. And we wanted him to be somewhere that I'm not sure he's ever going to be. I mean, you've talked about the impact of that shoulder injury and what pitchers have looked like coming back from the type of injury that he had. He may never be anything more than this point. He looks like a really good 4th or 5th starter right now.
Yeah, and that may just be who he is. And, everydayers will know we talked about this whenever Frankie Montas was acquired. There was a study done on major league pitchers who had this surgery and what their career was like afterward. And while they enjoyed some of their pre-surgery success, it was short-lived and their careers were overall shortened as well. I could kind of see this being the case where you're going to get Montas. You're going to get really, really good Montas every so often, but you're also going to get this Montas that throws a lot of pitches, gets a lot of walks, and has a really rough outing with it. And that kind of profiles as a 4th or 5th starter. Like, you still want that guy on your team because those good starts are going to be really, really good. And hopefully you're hitting well enough to support him and that's a win for you. But then have a bullpen like the Reds have to support Montas whenever he's having that kind of a bad game. And boy, oh boy, did Carson Spires come in and do exactly that. He picked a great time, and quite frankly, I was really hoping that the Reds were going to be able to complete the comeback in the 7th inning that it looked like they were building toward, and give Carson Spires a chance to get that win because he pitched so well in this game. 5 2/3 innings, his longest start as a major leaguer, had 7 strikeouts, 8 strikeouts. It's just a fantastic day for him, and really kind of set himself up for that last spot in the rotation, at least in the short term, where Graham Ashcraft has vacated.
Yeah, the 5th starter spot, I think, warrants an extended conversation, Jeff. So let's save the 5th starter spot for tomorrow's show because we're going to spend a lot of time talking about Graham Ashcraft there. But before we get out of this segment, as good as the starting pitching has been, the bullpen, there have been some performers out there. Let's start with your guy. You were pretty much first on this. If we were tweeting this, first with it, Jeff Carr, Fernando Cruz. He's starting to have his name bantered about possibly making an appearance in the All-Star game this year, as good as he's been in the first half, which is a rarity for a guy that's not going out there and getting a save every night as a reliever.
Yeah, and he's been so good, dude. I mean, you talk about the one outing that he had where he gave up the grand slam, and it was easy to see, okay, maybe that was where everything falls apart and he just becomes kind of a guy and he just kind of does some things. But that's not the case here. I mean, he has had a total, and I'm looking at his game log for the season. He has pitched in 31 games so far, Steve. He's only given up a run in 8 of those games. And it's phenomenal. And he's only had one other game that he's allowed multiple runs besides that grand slam that he allowed to the Padres. So this dude has just been phenomenal. And it's all because of that splitter. His splitter might be, I mean, there's some other guys, and we saw some pretty good splitters from the Cubs on Sunday. But there's some guys that have an argument for this, but he is in the argument as having the best split finger pitch in baseball because of how deadly it is and because of how well he can tunnel it with his fastball and just shut guys down. Like, he has shown himself to be the best relief pitcher on this team for this season, which, I mean, it kind of parlays into the question of, what do you feel about Alexis Diaz at this point? But Fernando Cruz has been there's a reason that he has pitched 31 times so far this year. It's because he is the most trustworthy guy out there in that pen.
Oh yeah, he's been electric. He's been a stopper in mid innings where the Reds needed a rally killed, and he has come in and more often than not absolutely shut it down. We're going to dig into this whole bullpen tomorrow after our starting pitcher conversation, but I just wanted to talk about Fernando Cruz for a minute because he has been absolutely phenomenal. My big takeaway here, Jeff, is that if the Reds offense, like we talked about in the first segment, continues to be as hot as it's been, and this starting pitching and Fernando Cruz, if they remain consistent like they have been, it's going to be a fun summer.
It certainly is, Steve. But now, coming up next, I got a question for you. Could the Reds benefit from a stadium with a roof? We'll give you the answer coming up next. Are you struggling to close deals? Business-to-business selling is tougher than ever, and that's why I want to tell you about LinkedIn Sales Navigator. LinkedIn Sales Navigator is a sales intelligence platform that helps professionals effectively prospect and engage high-value customers, drive higher revenue, and increase sales performance. Sales Navigator helps you target the right buyers, surface key signals such as job changes or which accounts you should prioritize, and it shows you hidden allies so you can find those buyers that are most likely to convert. Fueled by LinkedIn's 1 billion member platform, Sales Navigator gives you the most up-to-date, first-party data, enabling you to unlock conversations with the people that matter. Right now, you can try LinkedIn Sales Navigator and get a 60-day free trial at linkedin.com/lockedon. That's linkedin.com/LOCKEDON for a 60-day free trial. Let LinkedIn Sales Navigator help you sell like a superstar today. Just go to linkedin.com/lockedon and get started. You can catch every pitch of the Reds' hometown broadcast with SiriusXM. Just download the SXM app and search the word Reds. Also, for some written content about your Cincinnati Reds, bookmark the website CincinnatiRedsTalk.com. I'm writing over there, Steve's writing over there, James Rapine's writing over there. A lot of great folks writing about the Reds over at CincinnatiRedsTalk.com. And Steve, I kind of wanted to throw this out there because I got the chance. I was on a trip down south, took a cruise. It was a lot of fun. Everydayers will know that, I sent out a tweet, was just like, should I take a cruise the rest of the year? Feels like the Reds don't lose when I'm on a cruise. But yeah, anyway, I digress. That's not really like financially viable unless I start a GoFundMe and there's a huge, anyway, that's beside the point. Got the chance to go to a Marlins game. And I've been trying, I try to go to all the different stadiums. In fact, if you're watching on YouTube, I have a map behind me of the different stadiums, and I try to put a sticker on whenever I go to a new spot. And so I checked off the Marlins on this. And the Marlins, that's the first ballpark that I've been to that has a retractable roof. I know that there are a handful, I think there's like 6 or 7 ballparks in Major League Baseball that have a roof now. Most of them are retractable, and there's different articles and things like that about how very little they actually are open. They're mostly closed. But it was interesting to me because it made me think, in Miami, where it was blistering hot, it was like 105 degrees on Friday, I was able to go into this building that was climate controlled and feel nice and comfortable. Miami had rainstorms earlier in the day. I was not worried about a rain delay. But I couldn't help shaking this feeling that I wasn't at a ballpark when I was there. The different places I've been to San Diego, I've been to Wrigley, I've been to Fenway, been to PNC Park in Pittsburgh, been to even the White Sox Stadium, been to the Angels Stadium, all this other stuff. This is my first retractable roof one, and it wasn't my favorite. Like, shout out to Peter Pratt, Locked On Marlins, and any Marlins fans out there. I'm not trying to throw shade at the Marlins. I didn't love the vibe despite not having to worry about the weather.
You know, I had a similar experience. You know, last year I went and saw a game down in Tampa, and everybody talks about the Tropicana field. It's terrible, right? Like it's not not a fun baseball environment.
Some people argue whether it's the Coliseum or the Trop.
Right,
it's the worst.
It's for me. You know, I did not like being inside. I went to Globe Life this year, saw the Reds play the Rangers again inside. My takeaway is this: I feel like if I want to go to the Mall of America, I'll go to Minnesota and go to the Mall of America. These indoor baseball stadiums are basically the Mall of America with a playground in the middle, with a field, a playing surface in the middle. I don't like it. If you wanted a roof in Cincinnati, the only way that I could get behind it is if it was required by ordinance, by law, that the roof could only be closed when it was raining. I don't care if it's hot. I don't care what's going on. I don't care if it's cold. If it's raining, if there's precipitation falling, you can close it. The rest of the time it has to be open. That's the only way I would support having a roof. I don't like this indoor baseball business. I think it changes the feel of the game from a fan experience standpoint. It changes how the game is played. You know, you're not fighting wind anymore. You don't have to battle the sun. You don't have to, you know, all of the things that happen around baseball, all of the things that make you a good fielder per se, being able to battle the elements and the sun and the things, takes all that away. I don't like it. So for me, personal preference, I really couldn't get behind it. I don't know that Cincinnati will ever build a retractable roof stadium. I don't see that happening. But the only way I could support it is if it's only closed when it's raining.
I would say this though, like the Marlins had a heck of a hype, like pregame hype thing because of, you know, having an enclosed environment. Like it was like an NBA kind of ramp up to the game. Like
I love hearing that they're putting so much time into getting all 5 of their fans worked up that are there watching a Miami Marlins game. You know, if all 5 of those people leave the ballpark feeling like they had a good fan experience, right on Miami.
There was more than that. There was probably 6 or 7. But no, I thought it was an interesting experience because I thought about it while I was sitting there watching the game. I'm just like, boy, there was, and I'm trying to remember who the Reds opponent was, but there was a game earlier this season that I had tickets to, and I showed up at the ballpark. And I walk up to the gates and they're like, we've already decided that the game's been postponed to tomorrow. We're going to do a doubleheader tomorrow. The rain is too bad. We're not going to get this game out. And I just thought about that and I'm like, could you take that out of the equation? I thought that would be at least an interesting discussion. I'd be curious what the everydayers think down in the comments section and stuff like that, because I think most people would agree with you, and I don't necessarily know that I disagree with you. I don't know that I really have a take on it because I see the pros and cons. Like I see, okay, weather, not a factor anymore. Hype video, awesome. The pregame hype, you're getting everybody just absolutely fired up, but there's a personality change about it. And quite frankly, I don't think the Marlins have nailed it yet. And this stadium really isn't that new. And there was a weird thing. And I don't know, maybe our friend Pete over at Locked On Marlins can help us out with this. The word Marlins is like not in the stadium. There's like, it's like a banner in the very front entrance that says the Miami Marlins welcome you. And that's it. Like I find that very strange to me, in that I could look around that stadium and I see all these advertisements. And now we're getting like, you know, old man screaming at kids on the lawn, trying to get off my lawn. But it just didn't feel like I was in a Marlins ballpark. Like when I'm at Great American, I know I'm at the Reds ballpark. When I'm at PNC or Wrigley or something like that, I know I'm at that team's place. You could have put any 2 teams down on that field. And I just didn't quite feel like I understood whose the home team was. In fact, there were more Guardians fans than there were Marlins fans there. So you could have convinced me I was in Cleveland, except for the fact it was 105 and there were palm trees outside.
Well, this is what I know, Jeff. I think Great American Ballpark is a gem. I don't really want to change it. If we're ever going to replace it, I would probably protest a domed or roof stadium unless there were specific laws and protections put in place. And that is probably a good spot to go ahead and wrap it
up. Who had us ending with talking about protests on the bingo?
Right there you go. I will lead the charge on that. That's going to do it for this edition of Locked On Reds. Thanks so much for making us your first listen every day. Everydayers coming up on tomorrow's show. We're going to be talking about the rise and fall of Graham Ashcraft and the implications of his demotion on the starting rotation and the bullpen. Until then, Jeff, what can the folks expect from you and I?
They can expect us to be all over the daily movements of this roster, the lineups, the pitching changes, and all the great stuff, because they can expect us to be Locked On Reds every single day.
I was really expecting a news article that said you fell off your cruise ship.
Nah.